retreat, I think it's helpful to clarify. I'm going to review or clarify our just fundamentals of the meditation, of the practice. There's many of us who are have been practicing for a long time. Some people who are somewhat new, but still have been practicing. Everybody has been practicing for shorter or longer periods of time. And it is inevitable that we always bring assumptions into whatever we do, and that so to be able to starting with like a fresh start, fresh perspective, or at least trying to bring that into light. I've always found that helpful, beginning a period of retreat, to really try to come back to the basics, and because I think really everything grows up from those fundamentals of the Buddha's teachings and his guidance in practice. It's funny how thoughts pop into the mind from in random ways as I'm speaking. What comes to mind is a saying of Suzuki Roshi's, sort of, you're already perfect, but there's room for improvement. And so that sense of, okay, we've got a basis, but it's always helpful and our improvement comes from just that reviewing. And fundamentals. So that one of the most succinct kind of advice or pointing or directions is in the, to me anyway, Majjhima 44 is a shorter discourse on questions and answers, and it's the layman Visakha and the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina, and he asks, what is concentration? What is samadhi? And she replies, unification of mind is concentration, or is samadhi. And the four foundations of mindfulness are the basis, and the four right efforts are the requisites or the equipment of the practice and development of samadhi, and just the repetition, cultivation, development of those factors is the development of samadhi. So it's this four foundations of mindfulness, right efforts, and just attending to the quality of mind that came up in a question the other day, and it's something that I return to over and over again. That the effort is always concerned with the quality of the mind itself, in the sense of, do wholesome dhammas increase and unwholesome dhammas decrease? Then that's one can assume that is going in an appropriate direction. That's development and the progress on the path. So to be attentive to that quality of the mind and trying to bring in different ways that one can facilitate the wholesome qualities, wholesome dhammas, and also just recognizing and being ready to attenuate or relinquish the unwholesome. And so it's a fairly simple kind of equation, but it's quite momentous what the effect that it has on the mind, and particularly in meditation, because sometimes the moods of the mind, ideas in the mind, feelings that arise, they can be very strong, they can feel very real, and they can overwhelm the mind. And so that because the mind is immaterial, sometimes it's hard to have a really clear kind of sense of so then that reflecting on the unwholesome, it gives you a bit of a perspective. Is this conducive to the increase of wholesome dhammas? And of course, that intrinsic to the wholesome dhammas is well-being, clarity, stability. Those are intrinsic to a kusala dhamma. And the opposite, of course, is true for the akusala, the unwholesome. But also in terms of cultivation of samadhi, of stability of mind, peace of mind, the concentration. It does require a perspective, so that one is the foundations of mindfulness are very important for, like, one does need, like, the actual like Satipatthana, 4 foundations of mindfulness. They are foundations of mindfulness, so that it's an object of attention that one directs one's mindfulness toward, in order to help to have a perspective on what the content of the mind, or the feeling that's being generated, whether it's peaceful or not peaceful, whether it's and so that the object is, whether it's the body or feeling or the mind itself or objects of mind, dhammas, it helps to give the effect of a bit of a mirror, a bit of a reflection back, because it's so easy to absorb into the moods and feelings of the mind, or even the objects of desire or aversion, if there isn't some kind of perspective, and that's what your, say, like your meditation object is helping to um, to generate or to provide, and that and it's kind of like if one, like today's a really clear day, so if you look up into the sky and it's this spacious sky, there might be a cloud here, a cloud there, but it's not really clear if there's any movement, because it is a bit it's clear and spacious there, and but one needs like I'm looking up through this window here, and there's a tree there, or there's the actual frame of the window. So then you get a sense of, okay, is some sort of weather coming in, or is the weather moving along, or what? There you see and that's what an object of meditation is helping to do. And it's giving you a bit of perspective, so that you can get a more clear sense. And then you use that object of of meditation. Again, whether it's the body, feelings, mind, objects of mind, that it's all valid, useful. It's just that one. That's where one starts to develop skill in the use of applying attention, and then the samadhi, or the settling of the mind, the firm establishing of the mind, is the unification where the mind is not at odds with itself. Say its object and its internal feeling is not. It's not at odds with itself. Because obviously, say we want to be peaceful, we want to be happy, but then we can obsess about all sorts of different thoughts, or we can get caught up in some kind of discomfort, whether it's physical or emotional, and it can disturb. It does disturb the mind. So that unification of the mind with a wholesome basis is really it's so say fundamental. So that sense of ekakata citta is the sense of allowing the mind to come together rather than it dispersing, and that there's a discourse in the Samyutta Nikaya where the Buddha talks about the cultivation of the meditation, and as one is developing the say 4 foundations of mindfulness, and sometimes the body is has some kind of discomfort or pain, or is ill at ease for some reason, or there's a sluggishness of mind, or the mind is directed outwardly. It's sort of getting scattered, it's proliferating, and the Buddha encourages to lift up an inspiring sign, pasadaniya nimitta, which is pasadaniya is both say inspiring say, confidence or satisfying somehow. So it's giving, consciously lifting up say an image or a sign or an object to be inspired by, comforted by, at ease with, and of course that can take many shapes and forms, and that's where we have to experiment. That's where we have to see for ourselves. Well, what works, and what works at, say, now, and what might not work sometimes. So that the lifting up, just lifting up the breath is a as a, say, anapanasati. It's a soothing image. It's a soothing object of attention to settle on, and then to give oneself to that, and then that absorbing into the breath, the unifying of attention and one's observation, examination with the breath, that settles and brings the mind to a place of settling. And it can, and doesn't have to be the breath. I mean, that's where certainly the say Buddhanusati, and especially in terms of say this retreat, where will be an exploration of the story of the Buddha and the recollection of the Buddha. That recollection it can be, and one can use it in all sorts of different ways. I mean, it can be like an inspiring image. I mean, taking that literally, a visualization of a really peaceful Buddha image that one feels inspired by, and it gives one confidence. So those are embodying the qualities that I want to dwell in. I want to internalize. So that is it's an inspiring image, or a recollection of the Buddha in terms of some qualities that pops into mind. Just that Vijajarana Sampano, perfect in knowledge and conduct. I mean, it's a human being in the world who fulfilled true knowledge and conduct that was really inspiring, and to the point that it, he lived 2,500 years ago, and it still inspires people. Or just even the recollection of what are the aspects of the Buddha's teaching that are say unique or worthy of kind of solidifying them, settling the heart, and years ago, Luang Por would, as he is wont to do, he'd go through, pick up kind of a theme, and he would explore it for a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, it just is. It would be something that. But this one he followed up on for quite some time, and it would be just a rhetorical question. What is it that Buddhists know that ordinary unenlightened beings don't know? And it's just all things arise and cease and are not self. And you think, well, that's really ordinary, but it's not ordinary, because it's and when we reflect on it, especially as a theme in meditation, reflecting on as an inspiring sign, pasadani animita. It doesn't have to be like a visual image, an image or sign to the mind that inspires confidence and that sense of that fundamental truth of the arising and ceasing of all phenomena, mental, physical, internal, external, far, near, coarse or refined. It's all of the nature to arise and cease and is not self. And that has the power to. So on a rational level, one can hear that information and acknowledge it as a valid piece of information. But it has the, if we really, it does create the difference between an awakened being and an ordinary unenlightened person being. That's the chanting of the Dhammacakka Sutta we did this morning. That's the what Kondanya saw that allowed him to enter the stream of Dhamma and be the first awakened disciple of the Buddha was that yang kinchi samudya dhammang sampantang nirodha dhammang. Whatever is of the nature to arise, that has the nature to cease. That is your kind of doorway into transformation. And again, it's not just an intellectual piece of knowledge, but it when we bring it in, and of course that's why the cultivation of the meditation, of the cultivation of samadhi, unification of mind, 4 foundations of mindfulness as the basis for right efforts, as the equipment, it opens the heart to the true nature of things. So it's this giving ourselves to this process, allowing the mind, the heart to unify with Dhamma, that when we say it's one-pointed, which is another translation of Ekaggata, we say it's one-pointed, but the point is always, the point is Dhamma. The point is that reality. Those words like Luang Por would say, the reality of non-grasping is when we see things through the lens of impermanence, inconstancy of not self, of dukkha, there is a willingness to release. And it does require a settling of the mind, so that sitting meditation, walking meditation, but being alert to the kind of mood or feeling that one is generating, because we can say we can do it in a way that we're either just blindly following a technique, a method. Okay, the four foundations of mindfulness are like this. Mindfulness of breathing is like this, and plug the mind in, and somehow it's going to transform. It's one needs to be tuning in, and seeing what the effect is. Do wholesome dhammas increase and unwholesome dhammas decrease? What does it even mean for wholesome dhammas to increase and unwholesome dhammas to decrease? How do we experience that? What does it feel like? And that cultivation of these four foundations of mindfulness, and again, these are all valid doorways into that cultivation of mindfulness, clear comprehension, clarity, and there's in that same sutta with from the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha taught, because it's a sutta where the Buddha talks about directed meditation and undirected meditation, and the basis is always the mindfulness, and then as he lays out the different approaches, there's a phrase that to me is really striking as a part of this cultivation, is that inwardly mindful, I am content. Inwardly mindful, or I am happy. I assume the word is sukha. So inwardly mindful, I am content. Inwardly mindful, I am happy. And that's a part of the cultivation, a part of that development, that one does rely on this sense of well-being, and as one say that lifts up, and that's a very conscious, that lifting up of an inspiring sign. Another translation, a satisfactory image. I like the inspiring sign. That there's a gladness that arises, and one wants to, needs to direct one's attention in that way, when that sense of lifting up the something inspiring, and again, whether it's the breath itself, or the recollection of the Buddha, or recollection of a theme of Dhamma, or a Subhakamata, can be really inspiring. I mean, it's not something that you usually think of, but it can. It really brightens the mind. It really, oh wow, look at that. hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, the skin. Okay. It has that, and I say confidence, pasadaniya, or metta bhavana, brightening. So it's all these different doorways in, but then a sense of gladness, and then and of course then the Buddha goes into these, and it's sort of a stock phrase or stock sequence that comes up over and over again through the suttas in many different places. So that sense of gladness, and there's the arising of joy. It's kind of joyful, piti, and then with that kind of joy and gladness, there's a relaxing of the body. It's easeful. There's a sense of ease, and then with that relaxing of the body, there is a happiness, a well-being, and then with that happiness, then there is a settling of the mind. That samadhi arises out of that. But then within that samadhi, then that's where the Buddha goes on and saying, okay, there's this concentration, but the mindfulness is always there. 4 foundations of mindfulness are always there, in some way, shape, or form. One is not blanking out. One's not in some sort of trance state. Mindfulness is such a strong component, and that's certainly something that Ajahn Chah was always very clear about. The component of mindfulness, of awareness, the knowing, is not just present, but it becomes more clear, and it's inwardly mindful. So sometimes one is, say, mindful of just that knowing, and other things, because sometimes the body does drop away. Sometimes, thought processes do drop away, but that mindfulness is there. One knows what one's experienced. Inwardly mindful, I am content. This is contentment. This is happiness. And so that to be making much of that process of unification of mind, being, samadhi. That's the basis is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The kind of the equipment, the requisites are the 4 right efforts, and just the cultivation, the development, the practice of all those is the cultivation of samadhi. That should be enough to keep people busy today. Any questions? Well, one is, sometimes the results aren't immediately apparent, and or one does, there's oftentimes there's resistance in the mind. But I think it's sort of, this is where um, over time we gain kind of experience, and over time we get a confidence in, okay, I've seen this before, like where I go through, say, a slump in a period of retreat, or I have resistance at this point, or I get distracted at this point, and so then there's, okay, if I've seen this happen, I've seen this pattern, and that's where I think just that as one of the kind of those sets of dhammas that are the bodhipakya dhammas, the wings to awakening, the four bases of spiritual success, and that chanda, virya, citta, vimamsa. So chanda, that kind of sense of desire, interest, effort, applying the mind. But then that sense of examination and reviewing, and one does that reviewing is always a part of the process, and yeah, one can't get bored with reviewing, in the sense that we do have things we can be learning with. It's just like, even just as we start, as I was saying, I tend to start a period of retreat by coming back and clarifying basics, and I found it both feeds the inspiration, but then also I tend to get a new angle on something that I should have learned a long time ago. But it's so that sense of reviewing, and especially with that sense of the wholesome and the unwholesome, because something might be difficult, but it can still, because also in that sense of kusala, akusala, it always gets, and you start off with a fairly simple formula, but then the Buddha always, reality hits home where sometimes putting into a conditioning process, sometimes the unwholesome can be a condition for the more unwholesome, or the unwholesome can be a condition for the wholesome. And similarly, the wholesome can be a condition for unwholesome, and the wholesome can be a condition for the arising of more wholesome. So there's an evidence. Once you used to get four factors working, then you got to be. It's a complex system that we have to be patient with, investigate. And also, I think one of the things is that kind of recognition or investigation of the spectrum of what is called kusala and akusala, because it has implications on a psychological level, it has implications on emotional level, it has implications on a kind of a moral level, and so it's a term that the Buddha uses that is quite broad, and our minds tend to go, just tell me if it's good or bad, But the Buddha saying, well, there's a lot more nuance to this than that. So, and really the only way we learn is through experience and being patient. Oh, you see.
When you're talking about the luminous is the mind and the defilements are adventitious, when you say luminous, is that more the quality of knowing, or is it rather more? Is that more the emphasis more than actual brightness? As in, like, actual light, like actual.
Well, I mean, it's kind of both in the sense that there's a fundamental quality to the mind when we don't cover it over that is, it's luminous, it's radiant. But then it's also, it can be something that is an object of mind that we pay attention to. That's one of the objects that the Buddha, say for dispelling sloth and torpor, paying attention to light, incorporating a radiance to the mind. Also in terms of like a development, I mean, it's actually one of the doorways into supernormal knowledge is through that doorway of light. But I think really what in terms of luminous, it's a much more pervasive quality. The nature, like the nature of the mind is not to be naturally depressed and miserable. I mean, that's not its inherent nature. So it's more to me. It's on that level. This the mind is that when we're not covering it over, we're not getting distracted. Actually, it's quite lovely, quite delightful. Quite delightful to have a mind,
It's not like the nature of the mind is darkness. Sorry, there's nothing you can do.
Right, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get over it.